Hi, I'm Lillian from Wyoming. Please like and subscribe to MSP. It is hard to find the right words to describe my difficult childhood. It seemed like I had everything that makes a child happy. Delicious food, a roof over my head, my favorite toys, or almost everything. My parents were famous. Dad, a world-famous director, received multi-million-dollar checks for his work. And my mom was his insanely beautiful muse and an outstanding movie actress. To have a word with my parents, I had to wait in a long line with the fans. The fans were there to get an autograph, and I wanted a little love from my mom and dad. But my parents obviously didn't have time for me. I really wanted my mom to go shopping with me at least once and then talk about how I'm doing over a cup of coffee. This is what all my friends did with their moms. And Dad would read me a bedtime story, cover me with a blanket, and kiss me on the forehead before going to bed. But my parents ignored all my requests to spend time together. Lillian, your mom and I have no time. Look at our busy schedule. There's not a single opening in the next few months. Baby, let's plan our walk in 6 months, okay? Just remind my assistant about it 2 weeks in advance. In the meantime, you can ask my brother Zach to have a walk with you. Dad always said this, but even 6 months later, he didn't have time for me. But Uncle Zach wasn't like that. He lived with us and was very different from my dad. First in looks, Dad was always looking sharp, clean-shaven, and closely monitored his tooth enamel. And Uncle Zach grew his hair to his shoulders, almost never shaved, and it seemed to me showered very rarely. He didn't care about his teeth at all, and he drank liters of coffee and ate huge amounts of sweets. And he never failed to treat me to a sweet bun. For that matter, Uncle Zach never forgot about me. He was the only one in our family who was interested in my academic progress, never missed parent meetings and school performances, and could just listen to me. He was always there, and for a child, this is perhaps the most important thing. But in the 9th grade, I had to endure a personal tragedy. I woke up one morning to the nauseating smell of burning cotton wool. I was frightened, threw on the first thing I saw, and went down to the dining room. My parents were quickly eating breakfast, but Uncle Zach was nowhere to be seen. When I asked where he was and why it smelled of burning, my folks hesitated a little. Baby, Uncle Zach just moved out. We're too different. So it'll be more comfortable for us to live separately. And it smells of burning because your uncle accidentally burned my favorite shirt while ironing. He's not an adult. He's an infantile child, Dad said calmly. At that moment, I thought I was going to burst with anger. How could they? Kick out the only person truly close to me. Ugh, so that's what you're like, I screamed. You only love yourselves and don't care about other people's feelings. You guys have the star sickness. I've never met such pretentious people who are completely focused only on their own personalities. Uncle Zach was different. Only he really cares about me like family. After my angry speech, I ran into my room and slammed the door loudly. And for the next week, I ignored my parents. I had nothing to tell them. I also missed Uncle Zach a lot. And in order to somehow dispel my sadness, I accepted my parents' invitation to the premiere of my dad's film, where my mom starred in the title role, naturally. At the party with only VIPs invited, I tried not to show off. I merged with the crowd and wanted only one thing, not to be bothered. When I was sitting quietly, leisurely sipping my cocktail, a young guy approached me. He was a rising Hollywood star, and I won't name him. He gave me a sugary look and said with a sweet, self-satisfied smile, "Baby, you're such a sugar girl. I know you're sitting here waiting for me to approach you, so here I am, and I'm all yours today. I hope you're mentally prepared for such happiness. Could you dream of such a thing? Do you want my autograph?" he asked. Oh, to be honest, I was sick of such arrogance and self-assuredness, and actually this guy was clearly not my type. So I gave him a sarcastic answer and kindly advised him to go fulfill some other girl's dream, and said that I could definitely live without his autograph. But the guy wouldn't leave. Suddenly he pressed me against the wall, threw his head back just like in a movie, and with the words, "Don't resist your happiness," he reached for my lips. His mouth smelled like meatballs and rotten cabbage, and I experienced terrible disgust. The next moment, I kicked him with my knee really hard. I don't know what I hit, but he doubled up with pain. He couldn't stand on his feet and knocked down the waiter who was serving drinks. Together, they fell to the floor, smashed the glasses, and attracted everyone's attention. And it got the ball rolling. My parents had to take me away immediately, and the next day the journalist got wind of everything and distorted it so much that the hairs on my head stood on end when I read the morning headlines. These disgusting articles called me a crazy fan and a girl seeking fame. And someone even wrote that I tried to kill the actor because of unanswered love for him. Some journalists claimed that I was mentally ill and should be put in a nut house. Oh, every time I remember this, I feel sick. Ew! But the worst thing was that my parents threw me a huge scandal. What had happened cast a shadow on their reputation, and for some reason they decided that I really had mental problems and sent me to a psychotherapist, whom I was supposed to visit once a week. It's hard to imagine a more boring and useless activity. This blah, blah, blah about nothing really got on my nerves. I closed myself off from my parents even more and completely stopped communicating with them. Luckily, they left for some festival, I didn't go into details, and left me alone for a while. A week after they left, Uncle Zach came to our house, and he told me the terrible news. Turns out that the film festival to which my parents went was held on a huge ship in the open sea. Their cruise ship collided with a huge iceberg, like the Titanic once did. Can you even imagine? I never thought that in our time, with modern, highly accurate technology, something like this was possible. The ship sank, and most of the passengers were fortunately saved, but my parents hadn't been found yet. Baby, I understand how difficult it is for you right now. I'll take care of you and live here for the time being, Uncle Zach said. And I was so grateful to him. I don't think I would have coped with the surging emotions by myself. I was consumed with guilt for not even really saying goodbye to my parents before they left and avoiding communication with them before. Uncle Zach did everything to get me back to normal. He cooked me delicious breakfasts and brought them right to my bed. Together we watched funny movies on my Mac, ate pizza, and talked until morning. And he didn't scold me, even if I was late for school or skipped some tests after our nightly hangouts. But there was something odd about Uncle Zach's behavior. He entered my parents' room without asking and sometimes even spent the night in there. For some reason, he started taking Dad's clothes, his expensive suits, leather wallets, diamond cufflinks, and stylish shoes that cost thousands and thousands of dollars. Then it didn't really matter to me. The main thing was that there was someone dear around me who supported me in this difficult time. Once I stayed too long late in the school library collecting literature for a science project. When I left the building around the corner of the school, I met the same actor because of whom all the newspapers wrote about me. Turns out he was waiting for me, and I immediately felt that very unpleasant smell of rotten cabbage and meatballs. Baby, you are such a hot girl. No one's ever rejected me, and I always get what I want. I'm sure it's impossible not to fall in love with me, and your rejections are just a game, like a cat and a mouse. But we actually want the same thing. Baby, just admit it to yourself and give in to your feelings. This maniac pompously said. And I actually felt something unhealthy in his behavior and was very scared. I told this guy not to come near me, called Uncle Zach and asked him to pick me up. Fortunately, he was nearby and came for me within half an hour. When I got into the car, I couldn't hold my tears back. It was as if everything came crashing down on me at once. My parents disappearing in the exam preparation, and this actor stalking me was the last straw. I asked Uncle Zach if I should report this maniac to the police, but my uncle's answer confused me a lot and upset me even more. Lillian, don't be silly. This guy is a rising Hollywood star and has a great future. You're just too young and don't understand what dividends you'll get from hanging out with such a celebrity. And if you're lucky and you become his girlfriend, you'll be on the covers of all the most famous glossy magazines. Can you dream of such a thing at your age? And just think, you don't have to do anything at all. Well, maybe almost nothing, my uncle said, dreamily rolling his eyes. And at that moment, for the first time, I felt that some invisible gap had separated us. Doesn't Uncle Zach understand it's about my safety? And that I'm not going to be interested in a relationship with a vile guy for the sake of some elusive popularity, with a guy that already caused ill fame and the dirtiest gossip about me. But what happened next was beyond my understanding. The same evening, I noticed the door to my parents' room being ajar again. Uncle Zach was in there. And when I entered, I saw him in front of the mirror in my dad's favorite white suit, which he only wore once, when he was awarded an Oscar. My uncle combed his hair back and, trying to imitate my dad's manner of speech, talked to his reflection, bowed, and blew kisses to himself. "Oh, yes, thank you. It's such an honor. I'm very pleased that you appreciate my talent with such a high award. Oh, my fans, I love you too," he said, grimacing in front of the mirror. When he saw me, he was taken aback for a second, and then he said that my parents were unlikely to return, and we had to accept it. So he asked me to call him Dad now. "Lillian, since childhood, everyone compared me to your father. They said he was smarter and more talented, but it's not true. And now my finest hour has come. I've been waiting for it my whole life. I'll take his place. Let's tell reporters that I'm him. I just had plastic surgery," my uncle muttered in some kind of unhealthy euphoria, and I realized that he completely had gone off the rails. When I tried to convince him that it was all nonsense, my uncle began to show aggression, and I was seriously afraid for my life. And after that, he started tearing pictures of my parents off the walls and setting them on fire and laughing like crazy. I was so scared that I ran out into the street in the bathrobe, which I put on after the shower, called a cab, and went to the police station, where I told the cops everything. I spent the whole night there, and the next day, I saw Uncle Zach, who was talking nicely to a policeman. You see, my niece is a little out of her mind. She's very upset by the disappearance of her parents, so she's lost connection with reality and can make up stories that are easy to believe in, he assured the policeman. But luckily, the cops believed me. They received a response to their request from a psychiatric hospital where, as it turns out, my uncle was in compulsory treatment and recently escaped. He was sent there straight from the police station. This news really hit me. But I no longer had the strength to react and worry about this. I went home devastated and exhausted, but I still couldn't sleep. This destructive state of numbness was interrupted by an unexpected doorbell ringing. My parents had returned. I was crying and jumping with happiness. They said that after the crash, they were picked up by a small fishing boat, and sorting everything out and confirming their identity took a long time. They weren't surprised about Uncle Zach at all. Lillian, he had this diagnosis since childhood. He wasn't dangerous to the people around him before, but when your uncle set fire to the curtains in our room, we couldn't leave him next to you anymore. It wasn't safe, Dad said bitterly, and I understood why there was a smell of burnt cotton wool in the house on the day my uncle left. Meanwhile, my dad continued, "Sweetie, we knew how dear he was to you, so we didn't tell you everything, not to break your heart. Mom and I feel guilty. We were so passionate about our own lives that we didn't even notice how you grew up. Facing the possibility of death makes us rethink a lot, and we'd like to ask you for a chance to start over," he said sincerely and warmly. And at that moment, I realized that a new and exciting period of my life was beginning, and I plunged into parental love.